Hello and welcome. Hello. It's Mayhem with the Menopause Collective. We're talking about brain health and mental fitness and all the different things we could do to help ourselves. Let's say hello to the collective. We've got Tamar Chalice, and she's our counsellor. Claire, all-round natural medicine specialist. And Jackie, our clinical hypnotherapist. And me, of course, I'm mad about movement. And we are waiting on June to join us. Oh, that almost rhymes, doesn't it? I think it's really important that we have tools at our disposal that we can use in times of need for our own general health and wellness. If only we can remember them. That's the menopause, I'll bet. So brain cells. Did you know that we're born with our brain cells and we'll pretty much die with the same brain cells if we're lucky? What I mean by that is there's not the same turnover of brain cells as there is of other cells in our body. So skin cells, we know about that. Bones, we know that we will replace our bones. Bone cells renew and regenerate. But that's not happening to the same extent in the brain. There are parts of the brain that regenerate, but that's only small parts of the brain. And so, if you think about that, those cells become a little bit more important to care for, don't they? If you know that you're not really going to get many more of those brain cells. So we're going to talk about all the things we can do to care for those cells. It might be movement, it might be food. But then the other piece of this puzzle, mental fitness, is around the thoughts that we think. The whole diverse range of thoughts we might be having on a daily basis, how they can contribute to adverse levels of stress, emotion, and conversely, to totally shift the mood and give us that, lighter than fresh air kind of a feeling that we'd love to have floating through our day. So where to begin? Let's begin with nourishing the brain with food. And so I know that Claire can speak to that. Nourishing the brain with food. Claire, what do you say?
Well, I say that the easiest way to do that is to take supplements. So I know that feels like cheating, but it isn't cheating at all in today's world. And the supplements that I would be recommending for good brain health are primarily vitamin C, and secondarily, and as importantly, the B vitamins. So B complex, B12, B3. B3 especially there's lots of scientific proof and evidence to back up the fact that it helps with brain health and staving off problems like Alzheimer's and dementia. So by keeping, and especially as women, we do tend to go through B. You don't hold on to B very much. It tends to kind of go through, especially B3, it's water soluble. So taking a supplement, make sure that your body is getting the right amount. It just calms your nervous system as well. So it's good for your brain, it's good for your nervous system. And certainly when you start taking it, you should notice a difference and an improvement. Similarly with vitamin C, it just sharpens you, and vitamin C is really, really nourishing on many different levels. So there are good foods you can take. Obviously, oils are really good as well. You need the fats for your brain. People seem to, there's been a lot of emphasis in diet of recent years of cutting down fats, etc., which haven't done brain health any good whatsoever. And so if you don't have the right fats in your diet, then you're not giving your brain the right nourishment. So you'll be looking for good fats, so wholesome fats like avocado and delicious things like that are really good. And fish oils are really good, and that's another supplement you can take, your omega-3, 6 and 9. And when you take things like that, just be conscious of where that is sourced, because it does make a difference in terms of quality. Cod livers aren't what they once were because we've done a lot of damage to the ocean and put an awful lot of pollutants in there. And the liver is the part of the body that processes those pollutants and can hold on to them. So if you're eating like cod that have been fished in particularly pollutant waters, you are not doing yourself any favors, despite on the face of it looking like, way, I take cod liver oil every day. So yeah, consciousness over your supplement choices and their origins, and consideration over healthy fats. I can never remember whether it's saturated fats or I know it and I forget it every time. Do you know the difference, Philippa?
June's arrived. We're saying hello to June Trammer.
Yeah. And I know the answer to that one.
Yay! Yay! Go ahead, June.
I agree with everything you've said. Well, I got in just as you were saying about essential fats being very good for the brain. Polyunsaturated, we tend to, everybody goes fat-free because they want to lose weight. And all the fat-free things contain sugar, which are not good for your brain or your hormones or anything really, particularly. So that's why we need to get back to more natural things. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're talking the Mediterranean type diet, oily fish, fresh fruits and vegetables, lots of bright colors, pulses. And I found out an interesting fact that for the most part, vitamin C is contained within fruits and vegetables, but that apparently a great food for the brain is, and I know we've all got some of this in the fridge at home, caviar.
Right.
On your blini for lunch. Get out the caviar.
Oh, yes, that's great. But also coconut oil.
Ah, yeah.
Coconut oil is brilliant. I mean, I don't know if you heard the story of the doctor in America who her husband was suffering early onset dementia, and she fed him oodles of coconut oil, and he, his symptoms depleted, and he went back to where he had been previously. I know we make jokes about this, but he was eventually able to tie his own shoelaces again.
Oh, wow.
Which was a big deal, amongst other things. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We are women of a certain age, most of us, and Tamar is not quite there yet.
I'm not far behind, but yeah.
No, neither is Claire, really. I don't think.
I didn't know what Philippa was doing there. I thought I'd just let that ride.
Where's she going with this?
She's got a wonderful face massage. It looks gorgeous.
Joking apart, the thing is that it is in middle life, around the time of perimenopause. We don't even, need to get to advanced years for it to be really important to be doing this stuff. And in actual fact, it's in this middle life that we'll have the most benefit from making these changes in our diet, moving towards a more Mediterranean type diet, with introducing regular physical activity into our lives. And we'll be looking after those brain cells. Of course, the estrogen piece of the puzzle, we can't neglect that. The brain has estrogen receptors and is sensitive to the changes in estrogen. But equally, I feel that lifestyle is so important. We can't rely on medication or drugs to be the whole solution. It's part of the picture. And, for some people, and, I wear a patch myself, but still we have this responsibility to do all the things that we could possibly do to help ourselves, look after our bodies and nurture our brain cells. I suffered terribly with brain fog. And I know how horrible that is, and really did the test for dementia because I thought I was getting it, and low mood and anxiety and all those symptoms I did have. And I do feel that the patch helps with that, but by the same token, it's so important that we're doing all these other things that we can do to help ourselves. And I know, Claire, you wanted to come in.
I just wanted to say that with diet, what is incredibly important or useful to know is your blood type. Because coconuts for some people will be brilliant, coconut oil, etc. But if you're A, blood type A, that is, A positive, then coconuts are not your friend. So a part of the puzzle is knowing your blood type and getting the diet appropriate to your blood type. Because shouldn't eat caviar either, unfortunately. Any fancy seafood, which is really out of order because I love all that stuff. But that's the natural vegetarians. It's all based on origins and stomach acids and things like that. And it all plays an enormous part, or a very integral part of well-being. So that's just a dietary caveat.
Yeah.
Home test, by the way, really simple.
Oh, to know. If you don't know, you mean if you don't know your book. I happen to know. I'm O negative. Happen to know that.
The meat eater.
Yeah, so I have got that book. What do they call it?
Eat right for your blood type.
That's it. Thank you. I've got that book, and definitely it was fascinating. I found that the lists of things that may or may not agree with you, I pretty much concurred with. And this is because it's a journey that I've been on for a long time, and I consider myself to be quite in tune with how my body reacts to certain things. And so, yes, it was interesting. Even things that go out of vogue may still, in fact, be beneficial for us to consider. So it's worth knowing about all of these things. And so the other thing that we mustn't forget is water. And I've heard Tamar talk about this before. The brain is 80% water. 80%, and the cellular processes will not occur effectively if we're dehydrated. And there was a lot of talk about this in schools, wasn't there, that children should have bottles of water on their desks so that they're not going for prolonged periods without.
Yeah, except they won't let them go for a pee.
And they won't let them have the water. It's kept in trays.
What's that all about? I've got kids coming to see me who are kind of in a real pickle because they can't leave the room to go for a pee, and yet they're encouraged to drink all this water. So it's a tricky one.
So when the kids went back after lockdown, they had them on the desk because they wanted to keep everything contained. And my son drank so much more water. And when now it's gone back to the trays again, he's back to drinking hardly any. And I think it's training them out of regularly drinking water. I'm terrible. I have to really consciously focus on making sure I drink the water. And also neurodiversity in children or adults, ADHD, you forget to drink because you're so hyper focused on something else. You're not thinking about having to drink the water. So there's something around that training quite early on.
Exactly right. I just wanted to add in here that we're not just physical bodies, we're energy bodies. And it is about the energetic balance in a person, not just fixing symptoms. We have to pull them all together, and what they make is a whole picture. And what you can see, I do worry about this whole focus on the physical symptoms and, saying that your emotions will get sorted out if you just get the right chemical mix. It's not like that. And Jackie, our emotions are not based in our physiology, although they are affected by it. And in turn, they do affect our physiology. The three hormones that they want women to have. They want them to have testosterone. Well, why is that, do you think? Because their yang is deficient, because they've been pushing themselves so hard to achieve. And then they hit this plateau where their hormones suddenly shift and they can't keep up that pressurized lifestyle. And their yang just collapses, and then they get yin deficient as well. So the estrogen is going, the progesterone is also going, they're all going down.
Obviously, everything that we think, our body feels, so whether it's thinking about the menopausal symptoms that you're experiencing, whether it's rehashing in the mind over and over again, stressful situations, worries, thoughts, anxiety, it plays a part on the body. We feel the effects and our body re-experiences it every single time we rethink it. So this perpetual loop of beating yourself up or focusing in on a negative symptom, our body's going to feel it, and it does have an effect. In fact, I was just reading this morning a paper about positive thinking and optimistic thinking on our body correlates with fewer cardiac incidents and all mortality. So, there are hard and fast evidence for having a more positive and optimistic outlook upon ourselves, not just mentally, but upon our physical well-being as well. What we think about, we manifest. So if I was to ask you to just sit for this moment in time and ask you to start focusing in on your hands and imagine your hands becoming really quite warm, and just think about getting the warmth and that in your hands to further, enhance. You can sit here and all of a sudden you can have sweaty hands. And all I've done is ask you to start thinking about creating and generating heat in your hands. Well, bit sweaty. Women can experience this if they go out and they're sitting thinking about, oh my gosh, am I going to have a hot flush? Yes, you are. Because you've just asked your body to start thinking about how to generate and create a hot flush.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I've got patients, they start from down in the abdomen and they go all the way up from the ovaries right up. Yes. Well, whether it's the ovaries or not, I don't know. It's the dantian in Chinese medicine, but
your hot flush can be literally in the pelvic region.
Yes, exactly.
Be going all the way up there, But just thinking about it, we can create it in the very way that I can ask you to create hot hands. You can create any part of your body to generate heat, which is the same reason why we can use it. Hypnosis doesn't even have to be in hypnosis. It's just the power of the brain to create an analgesic effect of cooling. So this is where hypnotherapy can help the other way around with menopausal symptoms, in helping you to think of cooling thoughts, to reverse this cycle of feeling hot. But it doesn't have to just be sitting with the sense of heat from a menopausal symptom. It can be the anxiety that comes with it. It can be absolutely anything. Whatever we think about, we generate. So if we can learn to think of the more positive aspects and stop focusing on the symptoms, then we can find that we can have a decrease in the symptoms simply by just not focusing on them.
What we have to acknowledge is that there are estrogen receptors in parts of the brain, and that when those receptors are deprived of estrogen, it affects the brain. And so that's in its simplest. But what we're not able to do is to look at every variable that can also then concurrently affect. So stress, we know stress, cortisol robs us of our female hormones. So stress, modern life, like you say, women who are working really hard and juggling all these different hats that Jackie's talked about in the past, we're going to be struggling. The mechanism gets interrupted if we've got a whole lot of stress in our lives. If we're doing things in our lifestyle that are not necessarily contributing. So alcohol, Western diet is just top of the list for robbing us of our natural healthy propensities. What we're suggesting is that it's not simple. It's multifaceted. And when you start to take into account, like June says, energy medicine, the fact that, I'm an acupuncture trained physiotherapist, and so I understand. And I'm also a yoga teacher, and the nadis in yoga correspond similarly to the meridians in Chinese medicine. And the fact that we've got this, I can't call it a substance, but well, maybe I can call it a substance that is flowing in these pathways that different things will influence, and we'll get blockages and excess or the depletion of these pathways of energy. And that's a really abstract concept to get your head around. And so there's all of these different things into play to give us what is our sense of overall health and wellness. And so it is complicated, and nutrition is part of the puzzle, and hydration is part of the puzzle, and our thoughts are part of the puzzle. And physical activity is another important part of the puzzle. And so, I was telling you earlier before we came on air that I've looked at the inverse relationship between intensity of exercise and the beneficial effect on your neurochemistry, so that if you're doing low intensity exercise, it's going to have low effect. So the moderate activity is going to give you the most gains. And then as you go into high intensity activity, actually, we're starting to be potentially detrimental to the brain. And so the moderate activity, and that is an activity where you start to feel like you might be getting a bit out of puff as you're doing it, but you can still hold a conversation. If you're doing muscle strengthening type exercises, you can feel that the last 2 or 3 repetitions feel difficult, but you can still do them. Yeah, so that's moderate. And so exercise, it's got to speak to you. I love Pilates, I love yoga, I love to walk outdoors in the fresh air, and I love weight training, and I love all those things. And dancing, I love dancing. But find whatever it is that turns you on. It might even just be thinking of going up and down stairs half a dozen times every day during the course of your working day. Use the stairs instead of going in the lift.
Well, this is where memory loss is useful, because you go downstairs, you forget what you went for, and you go back up and try and remember. So there's a lot of that anyway.
It's a win-win, June, absolutely. And so Tamar, our resident counsellor, Tamar, have you got anything to add at this point?
Yeah. So there's quite a well-known book. It's known in therapy circles, don't know if it's known more widely, but called The Body Keeps the Score. And it talks about how when trauma is held in the body. And so quite often you'll find, when you meet someone who has unprocessed trauma, they'll have things like IBS or, physical conditions where it's that trauma is still in their body. And even if they don't remember it, the body always does. So there's something around having to process that trauma to release it, so it's then not blocking meridians and things like that and causing difficulties. And as Jackie said about, you manifest in the world, what you're saying. And so what we do is around positive affirmations. So if you wake up going, I'm going to have a really crappy day, you will have a crappy day. And your brain believes what you tell it. So if you tell it, I'm going to have the best day, over time, your days will get better because you're setting yourself up for a better day. And all that can become part of sort of a self-care routine, really, on setting yourself up for that day.
Yeah, and it sounds a lot to think that you've got to do all these things, but small habits to start off with. 5 minutes of affirmations, 5 minutes of lifting dumbbells, 5 minutes of skin brushing to stimulate the energy pathways, 5 minutes of self-care in a bubble bath. I know, and you don't maybe have to do all of these things every day, but it is a recipe. It's a recipe that works when you put those ingredients together. And one of our favorite ingredients, Claire, the essential oils. I know that I personally this week, I've been using peppermint on my palms, peppermint oil, rubbing it in, doing the dry inhalation that you told us about, just to give me a zing in the brain. What else can we do, Claire? What else?
So oil-wise, I've got them all here. Yeah, peppermint for people. Peppermint is just, for menopause, is just your friend if you like peppermint, because it cools. It just immediately is a grounding oil, so it's very spiritually grounding. It puts you back in your body, cools you if you're having a flush, calms anxiety, gets rid of headaches. Literally is like a Arctic fresh breath on the brain. It's just literally, and so fabulous for focus. Or if you say you need to remember something, or instructions are getting complicated, breathing in some peppermint before you receive those complicated instructions will help you to recall them. If you can't do peppermint, your choices are rosemary or eucalyptus. Frankincense is also incredibly good for the brain. The molecules of frankincense are small enough to cross the blood-brain barrier. So that's an incredibly powerful oil. Indeed, if someone feels that they are starting to have some of the symptoms of dementia or Alzheimer, frankincense all the time is just brilliant. And you can mix that with the peppermint and the rosemary in a diffuser or dry inhale. Other ones I would recommend are the wood oils like cedar wood, cypress, things like that are really going to ground and earth your thoughts. So you're earthing them into your body, anchoring your thoughts so that you feel less compromised because you can't remember what you were just about to say. And then there's geranium as well, which is always a friend, a balancer for the hormones, and again, very good for the brain. So the good thing about smells and essential oils is they're so powerful that they can recall you in an instant. So if you find yourself leaving your body or getting into a bad negative mindset or whatever you're doing, a physically difficult situation, smelling essential oils is going to regroup you instantaneously. And it's going to be, they work on that like all levels. So they're going to affect your mind, your body, and your spirit, your energy levels. So it's just like a completely holistic solution. So you can get a personalized blend, which contains all your favorite smells, which can just, help you to return and be present and feel okay about any mistakes that you may have made. That's what I would recommend.
Well, I made a mistake yesterday. I lost my rag in the doctor's surgery. Oh, dear. I know. Don't ask me why.
I am going to ask you why. In the doctor's surgery of all places. I mean, I can easily lose my rag in there, but you? Come on.
I just never go there, so I don't have to bother.
But today I've been beating myself up about it,
What did you do? You can't leave it like that.
Well, okay. My husband was there, and it just so happened we both had appointments at the same time. And I walked in and he was there, and I hadn't realized he was going to be stood there. I thought he'd be somewhere else. In the consulting, whatever. I walked in and I got totally, this happens at menopause, totally like a goldfish. Oh, and so I went over there to him, and I forgot to check in at the desk because I saw him there. It could have been a friend, it could have been anybody. Forgot to check in. Anyway, I stood there for 20 minutes and didn't get called. And then I went to the desk and and then I was getting cross because they hadn't called my name. And then, I said, are you supposed to check in? I mean, literally, I haven't been to the doctors for 2 years. And so I've literally just forgotten the protocol, what you're supposed to do. They used to have this thing that, like an automatic thing, you put your name in and everything. And she said she'd taken that away because it didn't want people touching it and, COVID and everything. So I was obviously just thrown on so many levels. Anyway, I was a bit, like hormonal, we'll call it, with the receptionist. And so today I've been feeling like, and this happens, doesn't it? We sort of carry this with us on an energetic level, on a psychological level. How can I leave that behind me, June? What do you think?
Well, that's a great story. I love stories. They really help illustrate things, don't they? People love other people's stories because they identify with, I recognize myself in that. It's so easily done, and I totally sympathize. Yeah, I mean, the thing what I was thinking about earlier on before we came on the call was the whole system of hormones. They are integrally linked. I mean, you've already mentioned how cortisol affects the reproductive hormones. You cannot take out the reproductive hormones and treat them on their own. It's kind of I feel it's a recipe for disaster. I think there are going to be consequences. But having said that, what we need to do is we need to think further back. What are the endocrine disruptors in our lives? And Claire's already alluded to the problems with the fish and the cod's livers and whatnot, not to mention the plastic that's in them all now. I mean, we are full of plastic. Okay, so that is not great because plastic is an endocrine disruptor. So starting right there, I don't know what we do about that. You'd ask me, I don't know. I'm just highlighting another thing that we need to be careful of in the home, air fresheners, things that exude things like formaldehyde. And then there's the PBA that they've taken out of baby bottles, but it's still in so many other things. Did you know, I only just discovered this recently, that in till receipts, there's that
BPA it is.
BPA, that's it.
Bisphosphonates or something.
That's in a till receipt, is it?
Bisphonate, something like that. Anyway, do not handle your till receipts unless you're going to go wash your hands straight away, and do not touch your face afterwards, because that's a really bad idea.
Why is this even a thing? Why does it even need it?
I don't really know it. So I think we need to lead a very clean life. And regarding food, we have to watch out for the glyphosate that they're spraying on things. This is why getting organic food, you may be able to just afford less of it, but then there's less food waste. So that's a win-win. because but people buy cheap food and then they just waste it. So that's not a great way to carry on. So and organic meat, if you're like me and O positive, I need my meat every now and again, but I don't need a lot, just a little, and it needs to be organic or grass fed or something like that. And wild salmon instead of farmed salmon, because they're fed all sorts of stuff too. So we have to just think. I mean, it's being mindful, isn't it?
Making savings where you can, but being realistic about it at the same time. Wouldn't you say, Tamar? Because otherwise you'll tie yourself up in knots trying to be perfect and failing miserably all the time. So it's
small steps. If you go big bang, it's unsustainable.
Yeah, we don't want to create more stress in people. Absolutely not. Oh, and the skin brushing also, it's really good for stimulating the circulation, and it also helps with the digestive system and the lungs, because the skin and the lungs and the large intestine are all connected in the same element in 5 elements. So it's a really great thing to do.
And I've been, guess what? I've been watching Wim Hof on the television.
Oh my God. oh no.
Guess what?
You're not going to go jump in ice, are you?
Are you?
I can't find any in North Highcombe where I live, but I have been having a cold few minutes at the end of every shower, a few cold minutes. Jackie's nodding. Do you do that, Jackie? Do you do that?
Yeah. Just to challenge the nervous system, and it helps with the ability to keep re-regulating. So
yeah.
You don't have to go anywhere to do it. You're already in there. It's like 2 extra minutes under the cold, and I think your hair benefits from having a bit of cold on it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Always wash your hair in cold water. Well, rinse it off in cold water to close down the pores and make it shiny and soft.
Does that help with hair loss?
Yes.
Which is a symptom of menopause.
Yes, it's good for the follicles. Yeah.
So let's just tie up this conversation. I totally concur that it is about doing a little bit of everything that you can fit into your life. Some positive affirmations, some self-care in the bath with some essential oils, even better. A few minutes under a cold shower, lots of physiological benefits. The circulation is boosted and the brain chemistry is altered. We're managing our energetic bodies by doing physical activity that doesn't drain us to death. Moderate intensity of activity is so beneficial for us in our daily lives. Getting some vitamin D sunshine on our skin as well, if we possibly can. Boost the brain with food, with movement, with thought. And take care of yourselves. Thank you again so much for showing up and giving of your time. I really appreciate this. And just remember to follow us on our Facebook group, Moving Through Menopause, our Facebook group. We love to help and interject with advice. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a fabulous Friday.